A few years ago, I took my two kids, Nate and Hillary, to a park we'd never been to before. The immediate context is that we were coming back from the school event at the rec center in a neighboring town, and were therefore driving in a new area. The event wrapped up early, and it was only around 6, so when we randomly came across the park, the kids begged me to go. It was an older park, with some parts looking worn and neglected, but it had a shiny new splash pad that immediately caught their eye. Nate, who was 8 at the time, and Hillary, 5, were bursting with excitement to play in the water. The sun was just starting to dip, casting a warm glow over everything, so I figured why not. I found a bench nearby and settled in to watch them. At first, everything was perfect. The sound of their laughter mixed with the splash of water, and for a while it felt like a normal evening. Nate was running through the jets, while Hillary giggled as she hopped from one puddle to another. But after a bit, I realized I couldn't see Hillary anymore. My eyes scanned the splash pad. Nate was still there, but she was definitely gone. I called out, "Hillary," and got no answer. A knot began tightening in my stomach as I stood up and started walking toward the edge of the park. That's where the grass grew taller and the trees got thicker, and I figured that's where she was. As I moved past the splash pad, I caught something, a flicker of movement behind a tree. It was just a shadow, quick and fleeting, but it made me stop for a second. I shook it off, telling myself it was nothing, and kept going. "Hillary," I called again, louder this time. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. There was a dark figure standing near some overgrown bushes. It was tall, too tall maybe, and still as a statue. I whipped my head around to look straight at it, but when I did, there was nothing there, just empty space. My pulse quickened. We'd been alone when we got here, or so I thought. I kept moving, brushing off the chill creeping up my spine. Then I heard it, saw footsteps crunching on the dry grass behind me. I spun around, expecting to see someone, anyone, but the path was still deserted. The park was silent except for the distant sound of Nate still playing. My heart was hammering now. "Hillary," I shouted, almost pleading. That's when I saw the figure again, closer this time, standing between two gnarled trees. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. Instead it just stood there, like it was watching me. I blinked hard, and it was gone again, like it had never been there. Finally, I found her. Hillary was crouched near an old, rusted playground set, half hidden by weeds, picking wildflowers. Relief hit me like a wave, but it didn't last long. "Hillary, you can't wander off like that," I snapped, sharper than I meant to. She looked up with those big, innocent eyes and held out a handful of flowers. "I was just getting these for you, Daddy," she said softly. I sighed, took her hand, and led her back to the splash pad, trying to ignore the way my skin was still crawling. After that, I just couldn't settle down. I sat back on the bench, keeping one eye on the kids and the other scanning the park. Every few minutes, I'd catch it again, that dark shape lurking just out of sight. One time it was behind a tree, then near the edge of the bushes, but every time I focused on it, it vanished. I ended up telling myself it was just my imagination, shadows playing tricks in the fading light, but deep down I wasn't so sure. The sun was almost gone now, painting the park in long, eerie shadows. I'd had enough. "Come on, kids, let's head home," I said, standing up. Nate groaned and Hillary pouted, begging for 5 more minutes, but I wasn't budging. "It's getting late, Hill. We need to go." They grumbled, but followed as we grabbed our stuff and started toward the car. Walking back, I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. It was like something was trailing us, just out of sight. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but the path stayed empty. Still, the hairs on my neck stood up, and I picked up the pace, ushering the kids along faster. When we reached the car, I turned for one last look at the park. For a split second, I saw it, a dark figure standing right by the splash pad, motionless, staring in our direction. I blinked, and it was gone. Nothing but the empty park stared back at me. The drive home was quiet, at least for me. The kids chattered about how much fun they'd had, oblivious to everything else. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or a tired mind running wild. But even now, years later, I can't shake it. What did I see that evening? Was it real, or just my imagination? I'll never know for sure, but sometimes, when I think back to that park, a cold shiver runs through me, and I wonder if we were ever really alone out there. My name is Bob, and I work for the Parks and Recreation Department of my city. The job does have some downsides, but overall it's nice. However, about 8 years ago, I had one truly terrifying experience. It was late August, and the summer heat was relentless. I'd been sent to one of the smaller parks in town to fix a splash pad that had been acting up. Kids had been complaining that one of the water jets wasn't working right, spurting out muddy water instead of the usual clean stream. My guess was a busted pipe or some debris clogging the system, so I grabbed my tools and headed over. The park itself wasn't much to look at. It sat on the outskirts of town, surrounded by overgrown trees and a sagging chain-link fence. The splash pad itself was a simple setup, a circular slab of concrete with a dozen or so jets, faded from years of sun and wear. When I got there, it was deserted. No kids and no parents, just the hum of cicadas and the occasional rustle of leaves. I didn't mind the quiet, actually. It meant I could work without interruptions. I pinpointed the problem jet pretty quickly and shut off the water supply. The ground around it was damp and muddy, which made sense given the complaints. I figured I'd have to dig down to the pipe, clear out whatever was blocking it, and patch it up. Simple enough, I thought. I started digging, the shovel slicing through the soft earth with ease at first. But the deeper I went, the harder the soil got, packed tight like it hadn't been touched in years. After about 15 minutes, I hit something solid. The shovel made a dull thunk, and I paused, thinking it might be a rock or a chunk of concrete. I scraped around it, loosening the dirt, and pulled it out. It wasn't a rock, it was a small, tarnished metal tin, the kind people use to store keepsakes or old photos. It was dented and caked with mud, but intact. I brushed it off, figuring someone had lost it or tossed it years ago. Parks are full of buried junk after all. I set the tin aside and kept digging, focused on finding the pipe. But as I went deeper, the hole started to smell, faint at first, like wet soil, but then sharper, almost metallic. I ignored it, chalking it up to stagnant water in the line. Then my shovel hit something else. This time it wasn't metal. It was softer, with a little give, like fabric or leather. I dug around it carefully, my curiosity getting the better of me, and pulled it free. It was a shoe. A kid's shoe, small and worn, the laces still tied in a messy knot. The leather was cracked and discolored, like it had been buried for a long time. I turned it over in my hands, confused. Why would a shoe be down here, a good 2 feet under the splash pad? A chill ran up my spine, but I told myself it was nothing, just a lost item, probably swept into the soil during some old construction work. I tossed the shoe next to the tin and kept going, determined to finish the job. But the smell was stronger now, unmistakable, rot, like something dead. My stomach twisted and I hesitated. Maybe I should call this in, I thought. Let someone else deal with it. But I'd already come this far, and I didn't want to look like I couldn't handle a simple repair. Therefore, I took a deep breath and plunged the shovel in again. That's when I saw it. The soil shifted, and something pale peeked out, a curve of bone, smooth and white against the dark earth. My breath caught in my throat. I dropped the shovel and used my hands, brushing away the dirt, hoping it was just an animal skeleton. But the more I uncovered, the worse it got. Based on what I saw next, this was unmistakably human. I fell back, my heart hammering in my chest. How was this buried right under the splash pad where kids played every day? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. How long had this been here? Who could have done this? I glanced at the shoe and the tin, realization sinking in. They weren't random junk, they were connected to this. I grabbed the tin again, my hands trembling, and forced it open. Inside was a faded Polaroid photo, edges curled from age. It showed a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, standing on the splash pad, this splash pad, smiling at the camera. She was wearing the same shoe I'd found. On the back of the photo, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Never forget her." A wave of nausea hit me. I dropped the tin and scrambled to my feet, looking around the empty park. The trees seemed to loom closer, the silence heavier. I didn't know what to do. Call the cops? My boss? What would I even say? That I'd found a body in a creepy photo under the splash pad? It sounded insane. In the end, I didn't call anyone. I couldn't. I shoveled the dirt back into the hole, covering the bones, the shoe, everything. I told myself it was too late to do anything, that whoever this girl was, she'd been gone a long time. I fixed the jet, turns out it was just a clogged filter, and left the park as fast as I could. I quit the job a month later. I just couldn't handle being near any park after that. I never told anyone what I found, but I still see that girl's face in my dreams, smiling like she's waiting for me to come back. Sometimes I wonder if I should have reported it, if I could have given her some kind of peace. But then I think about that message, never forget her, and I wonder if someone else out there already knows what I found. And I wonder what they'd do if they knew I'd seen it too. I have 2 younger siblings, including my brother Max, who's 7 years younger than me. As the oldest, I would frequently have to take care of Max and my sister Amelia, which did get in the way of hanging out with my friends sometimes. However, they were good kids, and all things considered, it really wasn't that bad. On one random day in the summer, Max got excited about visiting this park our parents used to take us to when he was younger. Amelia was at her friend's house, and our parents were at work, and Max and I were just chilling at home. Therefore, there was nothing stopping us from going over there. I didn't necessarily want to admit it, but I felt a bit nostalgic too, and was curious if everything at the park was still the same. Since it was hot out, Max convinced me to join him at the pool/splash pad area, and we put on sunscreen before getting into my car. The drive over was quiet, just the hum of the engine and Max fidgeting in the passenger seat. When we pulled into the parking lot, the park looked almost frozen in time, familiar but faded. The slides were chipped, the picnic tables weathered, but the splash pad still stood out, water jets gleaming in the heat. Max didn't waste a second, darting out of the car and straight toward the water, his laughter echoing behind him. I grabbed our bag and followed, the sun beating down on my neck. There weren't many people around, a couple of moms with toddlers, an older guy reading a newspaper on a bench. Then I saw her. She was sitting near the splash pad, legs crossed, flipping through a phone. She had dark hair tied up in a messy bun, and even from a distance, I could tell she was gorgeous, like way out of my league gorgeous. She looked up, caught my stare, and flashed a small smile. My palms went sweaty, but I figured why not. I walked over. "Hey, mind if I sit here? It's brutal out," I said, gesturing at the sun. She laughed lightly. "Go for it. I'm Mia." "Jake," I replied, plopping down beside her. We started talking, and it was like we'd known each other forever. She was 16 too, lived a few towns over, and loved the same video games I did. I was so into our conversation, trying not to sound like a total dork, that I almost lost track of Max. I glanced over and saw him dodging water jets, grinning like a maniac. But then, something else caught my eye. A guy was standing near the edge of the splash pad, half hidden by a tree. He was older, maybe in his 30s, wearing a faded jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't moving, instead he was just watching. Not the parents, not the scenery, but the kids, specifically Max. My stomach twisted, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Mia noticed me tense up. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice low. "That guy," I muttered, nodding towards him. "He's been staring at my brother." She peeked over, frowning. "Yeah, he looks creepy. You should keep an eye on him." I nodded, but we kept talking. Well, half talking. I couldn't exactly shake the feeling. The guy started moving, slow and deliberate, circling closer to the splash pad. My heart kicked up a notch when I saw him reach into his jacket and pull out a small plastic ball, rolling it between his fingers like he was waiting for something. Then he stepped onto the wet concrete, heading straight for Max. "Max," I yelled, jumping up, but the water and the kid's shrieks drowned me out. The guy was closing in, and I saw him hold out the ball, saying something to Max I couldn't hear. I bolted toward them. "Hey, back off!" I shouted, my voice cracking. The guy turned, his cap shadowing his face, but I caught a glimpse of his eyes, sharp, too focused. "Relax, kid," he said, his tone slick. "Just playing with him." "Max, get over here," I snapped. Max hesitated, then ran to me, water dripping off him. "I was just tossing him the ball," the guy said, stepping closer. His jacket sleeve slid up, revealing a tattoo, some kind of jagged symbol I couldn't make out. "Stay away from my brother," I said, my fist clenching. He smirked a slow, ugly thing. "What are you gonna do about it?" Then he lunged, not at me, but at Max, grabbing for his arm. I didn't think. I shoved Max behind me and slammed into the guy, knocking him off balance. He swung at me, his fist grazing my shoulder, but I ducked and tackled him into the shallow water. We hit the ground hard, splashing everywhere, and I could hear Max yelling my name. The guy was bigger and stronger. He grabbed my shirt and shoved me down, water rushing up my nose. I thrashed, landing a wild punch to his side. He grunted, loosening his grip, and I scrambled on top of him, pinning his arms. "Get off of me," he snarled, but before he could finish, a couple of dads from the benches ran over, pulling him up and holding him back. Mia was there too, phone in hand, shouting that she'd called the cops. It all happened fast after that. Sirens wailed and 2 officers showed up, cuffing the guy as he spat curses. They asked me questions and took statements. Turns out, he wasn't just some random creep. He'd been spotted at parks before. Apparently he had always had some excuse and was never caught. That is, until now. When it was all over, I just sat there on the grass, Max clinging to my side, still shaken. Then Mia came over, her eyes wide. "Jake, that was insane. You were amazing." I managed a tired smile. I had to keep him safe. "You did more than that," she said, sitting next to me. "Not many people would have done what you did." We talked more as the adrenaline faded, and before we left, she scribbled her number on my hand with a marker from her bag. "Text me, okay? Maybe we can hang out without all this." "Yeah," I said, grinning despite everything. "Definitely." The next few weeks, Mia and I started texting, then hanging out. Movies, arcade trips, even back to the splash pad once, though I kept Max close that time. We started dating, and it just worked. Years later, we're still together, stronger than ever. Max grew up too, always calling me his hero from that day on. That summer at the splash pad was the scariest thing I'd ever been through, but it gave me Mia, and showed me what I'm capable of when it matters most.